So one good prayer ought to do it. One turn of the wheel, one prayer from the heart is everything. You don't have to do it 10,000 times. Today is February 4, Saturday. It's in the afternoon this time. Look what I got at a yard sale at a flea market. It's called a Tibetan prayer wheel. The prayer wheel first started in about 400 AD in China or Tibet. And inside the prayer wheel is hundreds or thousands of handwritten little prayers. And I took the lid off and looked inside. In fact, it's jammed with these prayers. They're smashed in there. There's a lot of them. So when you say a prayer, you spin the prayer wheel. I'm going to do it now. The prayer that I just said is multiplied by the number of prayers in here. So if there's 100 prayers in there, I just prayed 100 times. That one prayer has the power of 100 prayers. Or if there's 1,000 prayers in there, then my prayer has the power of 1,000 prayers. So that's pretty neat. That looks like an old one. I've read I don't know if it's ancient religious literature. If you consider the 1300s ancient, it's encouraging when I read a book about or by St. Augustine, or poems by Rumi, or disciples of Christ, that they often do the same thing. They point to what's important, what's real, I know it's real because the things that some of that literature and scripture points to, I know it's real because it has stood up. It was true in the year 300. It was true in 600 BC, Old Testament. And it's true now. So that's a good indication that that God had its influence on those words and ideas. Okay. I read today a student's talking about the path. You mentioned the path. It's 20 degrees outside. Furnace just came on. I was thinking about the path. That word doesn't point well for me, because path indicates that God is elsewhere, that we're on a journey, on a path that's in time, to get from here to there, to awaken to the presence of God, the oneness with the universe or something like that, that we're on a path. And that word and that idea works well usually. But it doesn't work when you're standing on the threshold, meaning you've done all the work, all the spiritual work on the path, let's call it. But at that jumping off point, where you experience the presence of God, where the awakening occurs, the idea of path, time, on a path in time, has to be let go. Concepts have to be let go. And it's in that literature, that ancient literature. It's in the Bible. Something like the road to the kingdom is not marked with signposts to be read. I don't have that exactly right, but that's of the Christ within. Awakening to the Christ within, let's call it in the Bible. That's what it would be about. Okay. So Rumi was a poet, I think he was Sufi or a Sufi, and that he was maybe even, he was aware of Christ and Christianity. This was in the 1300s. And St. Augustine also, he was in Sufi. When you read the poems by Rumi and the writings of St. Augustine about St. Augustine, what I found is they point the same as the pointing happens here today. Things that I read now, I mean. That what was true in 1300s is the same truth that's now. And that's when, so the idea of the path comes into play now. Okay, how about this? Okay, we're living in time. The body's born, the life of Paul moving through time, the path, the spiritual path. And don't we expect salvation at the end of the path? Don't we expect to wake up? Don't we expect to experience the presence of heaven and God within at the end of the path? That's how I always saw that word, that concept of the path. Okay, here it is. In the ancient literature, and in my experience about awakening, the thing that we're seeking, or I used to think I was seeking while I was on the path, the spiritual path, it was already here. So that kind of messes up the idea of the path. We don't have to go anywhere. Being on the path, spiritual path, is helpful. And it's often necessary. But in the end, it's relinquished. Like all things, all worldly things that are in time. Path that Rumi and the apostles were on, the disciples, I mean, is the same path I'm on. The irony is that God already loved us. Loved us in the 1300s. Love us now at our red table with our prayer wheel. That the path leads away, but in the end it leads back the path leads back to the self, capital S self. The path leads back to the capital S self, where God is located, has always been located. So when I do prayer or meditation, in the quiet of my mind, sudden quiet, that clarity and that lack of noise is obvious. That there's nothing wrong. There wasn't ever anything wrong. God is already here. What I'm looking for is already here. Okay, what up? Send a message to Tibetan monks everywhere. It has been my experience that when I pray from the heart, a deep prayer, a prayer that's not based in any ego, that the prayer itself and the praying is something of the divine world. And because of that, things in the divine world are typically or always infinite. They're timeless. So, here's my issue with the prayer wheel. I feel that if we right now say a prayer, a very deep prayer, let's do it. That only takes one prayer. It only takes one prayer for God to hear, so to speak, for the prayer to take effect. It only takes one turn of the prayer wheel to make that happen. It doesn't take 1,000 prayers. So one good prayer ought to do it. One turn of the wheel, one prayer from the heart is everything. You don't have to do it 10,000 times. Although I like this idea, 1,000 power prayer wheel, multiplying prayer wheel. It's like a calculator, huh? Or some high science.